This week, I discovered firsthand how a tradition can both be a good thing and a bad thing. Do you remember me saying we had soft-boiled eggs and toast soldiers on Christmas morning? What a lovely tradition. Well, it is a lovely tradition if you like soft-boiled eggs, or if your wife hasn't made some lovely banana muffins that are warm, fresh from the oven and smelling yummy. My name is Ian Currey and this is Thinking Out Loud. Come on, let me tell you what I think. I love eggs for breakfast. I sometimes make an omelette or have an egg on toast, or at least on the few days I'm not in a tearing hurry. Now, if I'm feeling really adventurous, I might even poach eggs. Now, those are my favourite, but they're kind of hard to get right. So when Christmas morning comes around and the whole family has soft-boiled eggs with toast soldiers, I'm as happy as can be. But given the choice, at least one of my sons might choose pancakes rather than egg. And I don't think I've even thought about trying some of that great smelling German holiday bread that has honey instead. Thinking about it makes me feel like maybe I can have both and see if I can avoid bursting. So while I like soft-boiled eggs, even though they only really happen on Christmas morning, perhaps I'm missing out on something else by sticking to a tradition. Traditions are funny things, aren't they? Let's see. Can you think of anything that is a tradition in your family? Now, I know many of you watch these videos as a family, so you can pause the video here and have a talk about it. What are the traditions that you have in your family? Oh, but before you do, here's a second part of that same question. It's to go with the first part. Where did the traditions start and why? Okay, so have a chat and we'll be back to thinking in just a moment. Well, for those of you who were too lazy to pause the video and have a chat, I was going to show you how to make toast soldiers. The toast has to be cooked well enough to make the bread stand up straight, well, like a soldier, and has to be cut into strips that fit into an opened boiled egg. But since this isn't a cooking program, well, you're on your own for boiling an egg. Now, for those of you who had a chat and have rejoined us, and we're talking about traditions, the rest of us were just talking about toast and how to boil an egg, so you didn't miss anything. So what traditions did you come up with? I'd love to hear. You can post those comments down below here if you like. It's funny the things we all have as traditions, isn't it? Now, some of those things define who we are, or even define our culture. Others are just fun things, and there are things that we do but just don't know why we do them. Now, there probably was a good reason once for some things, but often that's been long forgotten. In our family, there's a tradition that someone pointed out to me a long time ago that until it was pointed out, I didn't even think about it. When Hillary and I are walking, I will always walk on the outside, the roadside, away from Hillary. Hillary always walks on the inside, away from the traffic. So why is that? Now, if we cross the road, I'll walk behind Hillary and change sides so we cross automatically and end up on the outside again. Now, some of you already know what this is all about, especially if you're from England. It's part of being a gentleman and having manners. But only in that culture, it seems. Seriously though, walking on the outside is something I was taught to do as a young boy. It's just the right thing to do. I actually don't know, at least I don't think I know why it's there. It just is. Tradition, it says, comes from the old Tudor times when houses were stepped out over the street and chamber pots were tossed out of the window. Ooh. And that way the woman would be protected from getting hit by a nasty surprise. Others say it's to avoid the splash of passing vehicles. But I'm not sure I really buy these explanations. I think some explanations are just set up to justify traditions, aren't they? It just justifies the tradition's existence. Well, for whatever the reason, I walk on the outside and feel quite wrong if I'm on the other side. Now, I just asked Robert, eggs or pancakes? And his reply was, well, it depends which day. You eat pancakes on Saturdays, not eggs, and eggs on Christmas morning, not pancakes. I asked, why? And he thought for a moment, and then he said, well, just because. Pancakes on Christmas morning wouldn't be right. So there we have it. It's just not right. Now, I love the musical Fiddler on the Roof, and some of you are already humming the tunes. And that opening song, Tradition, it really sums up the whole storyline, doesn't it? Tradition makes people predictable, and situations that have an inevitable outcome because of their tradition. Certainly in that musical, you can see what's going to happen long before it happens because of the traditions that are so firmly in place. Once you know what the tradition is, you also know what people will do or choose given a particular situation or set of circumstances, don't you? Sometimes, actually all too often, religion can get filled up with traditions too. Now, sometimes something that started out as a great idea, a good thing, once, long ago, has now become something that it was never intended to be and is getting in the way of a dynamic relationship with others or with God. When Jesus walked the earth, tradition was something that he often toppled, or at least fought hard against. There's a good example of this in Mark's writings. The religious leaders of the day had a grip on the people's lives by holding them firmly to traditions. And those traditions had started out probably as something good, long before. Now they've become nonsense and rules instead of necessary or fun. On one occasion, the Pharisees noticed that some of his disciples failed to follow the Jewish ritual of hand washing before eating. There was a particular way of washing hands before eating that really had become a ritualistic tradition. It wasn't much to do with actually cleaning up for dinner. No, not anything like that anymore. Though of course it had started out as a good thing. Probably as a reminder to have a clean heart and mind before you come before God or something. I don't know. But it's probably that was the original thought. And so they asked Jesus, why don't your disciples follow our age-old tradition? They eat without first performing the hand-washing ceremony. Now, Jesus wasn't having any of the nonsense. I think maybe he was having far too much fun with his disciples chomping on special treats or something to get up and go perform a ritual before they could have a treat. Jesus replied, you hypocrites! Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you and wrote, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship is a farce, and they teach man-made ideas as commands from God. For you ignore God's law and substitute your own tradition. Jesus goes on to say, you skillfully sidestep God's law in order to hold on to your own tradition. And then Jesus goes on to give them a tongue lashing. He was telling them off about how they were teaching people to get around the letter of the law to avoid doing the right thing. Now, in this case, it was not looking after elderly parents and being respectful of them. But there were many examples, and Jesus was angry about it. Yes, traditions can be a lot of fun, can't they? But when they start getting in the way of relationships and progress, or a tradition starts preventing you from taking time to discover something new, perhaps it's time to break with tradition and do something else. Routines and traditions can be comfortable, ways to live that establish who we are and what our culture is. But sometimes those same things get in the way of progress, new ideas, and reaching the full potential of who God intended us to be. As we move into a new year, let's take a look at why we do things the way we do. Decide intentionally to try something new and not get bogged down in traditions that stifle creativity and development. Until next time, goodbye.